Branded, Chapter 8. Are you going to turn in soon? My mother asked as she peeked in the door of my room. Soon. And you? Possibly not so soon. I have a big day tomorrow. Pre-trial hearing. I've been looking at situations where people need a good lawyer, I said. Really? She said. She came into the room and looked over my shoulder at the screen. It was a picture of 5 kids. A couple of them looked 9 or 10 years old, standing in front of a factory. Those kids look like they need a school more than they need a lawyer. The only way they'll ever get to school is if they had a good lawyer. They're all factory workers. I've heard about things like that, she said. I've heard things too, but nothing like what I've read. Kids as young as 5 and 6, basically used as slave labor. They get paid next to nothing, if they even get paid at all. They're locked in factories, separated from their families, beaten and abused if they don't make quotas, or even if they do. Have you looked at the laws to protect them, she asked. In some countries there are no laws, or if there are laws, they're so different from ours. It's legal for little kids to work 12 hours a day. It's legal to pay them next to nothing. And even the laws that are in place are ignored or broken. There are almost no health or safety codes either. Some of the conditions are hazardous, dangerous, and deadly. Some people say that at least they get some food and some pay and enough food to survive. It's unfortunate and sad, but better than the alternative, she said. Maybe the alternative is to pay their parents enough so their kids wouldn't have to work. That sounds like a good alternative. All the companies have to do is earn less than $15 billion profits, or pay the celebrities less than $30 billion to endorse their products. Or if people were prepared to pay more for the product, she said. That would work if people weren't so cheap. That is working. Have you heard about fair trade products? She asked. No. I typed the words fair trade into the search engine. It's products, often coffee or chocolate and clothes, which are guaranteed to be produced in conditions that are fair to the people who make them, I said, reading off the screen. Exactly. They pay them living wages, it says. And the factories or fields are more humane. Of course, that means the product costs more. How much more? I asked. We buy fair trade coffee, she said, and it's about an extra $1 per package. That's not too much. It's fair to both the producer and the consumer, those that make it and those of us who buy it. So how do you know if something is fair trade? I asked. Usually they advertise it. The real question is, how do we know that it really is fair trade? That's the problem I'm having. I'm trying to figure out for sure what the truth is, I said. They used to say, believe only half of what you read, and then seeing is believing. With photoshopping, that doesn't work anymore. I could make a photograph of me working in one of these factories. So, what do you believe? She asked. I believe the reports are reputable organizations like these ones, I said. I clicked up a report on child labor. Interesting, my mother said. And how do you know that the report hasn't been altered or doctored? Well, I guess I don't. A judgment always has to be made. And speaking of judgments, I better get back to work. She reached down and gave me a kiss on the top of my head. Not too much later, okay? You neither. Promise. It was time for me to go to sleep. I wasn't going to solve the problems of the world right now. I went to turn off the computer, but hesitated. I was partway through the special report on child labor. I'd just finished it. I scrolled down the page to where I'd left off. It was a list of the worst offenders, the companies that year after year were the worst exploiters of children, the 10 biggest bottom feeders. This wasn't going to be good bedtime reading, but who was I to complain? I had a bed and a roof over my head, and tomorrow I'd go to school, not some sweatshop. Chapter 9. Oswald and I stood at the double doors of the gym and watched. It was sort of fascinating. The gym looked like a gigantic cut-rate clothing store. There were dozens and dozens of tables filled with items that made up the school uniforms. There were mirrors and dividers to make mini change rooms all over the gym. There were also 20 or 30 employees of the uniform company taking measurements, getting clothes for kids, and working the cash registers. Wandering among the tables were the students about to be fitted. They were going grade by grade. We were next. By the end of the day, it was all supposed to be done, an impressive act of organization. Oswald was, of course, in his uniform. He seemed to enjoy wearing it. I thought that he would hate the uniform. Oswald prided himself on being different. I guess being the only one in a uniform made him an individual. Everybody had been watching him, asking him questions and checking out his clothes. I knew him well enough to know that he wouldn't like it nearly as much once everybody was in matching costume. Looks like you're just dying to get in there and get fitted. It was Julia. Can you blame him? Oswald asked. This look is nothing short of sharp. Strawberry jam and toast, Julia replied. Oswald looked confused. That wasn't the response I'd been expecting either. She pointed to a stain on his jacket. You had strawberry jam and toast for breakfast? Oswald tapped his finger against the stain and then popped it in his mouth. Raspberry jam. And the beauty of the polyester blend is that it doesn't stain permanently. I could spread jam directly on the material and it would just wipe away. Another fine reason why we should all wear uniforms, she replied sarcastically. I think this thing is practically fireproof, he added. Why don't we try to set it on fire and find out, she said with a mock excitement. Julia was surrendering the idea that she could stop the uniform. She'd found that while lots of people were unhappy about them, nobody was willing to do anything about it. Not that there was much to be done. It was a board initiative, supported by the Parents Association, and it was something that Mr. Roberts wanted. That was a deadly combination. I think whether you like the uniform or not, it's a done deal, I said. It's a shame that nobody came up with the great idea to stop them, she said. Of course, that comment was aimed straight at me. I hadn't come up with an idea. Not that I'd been thinking that hard or cared that much, but if I had, I would have told her. Probably. You really are okay with this, aren't you? She said, looking at me squarely in the eye. It's not a big deal, I said. It's not a big deal to you. I had just about had enough. It shouldn't be a big deal to anybody. And what is that supposed to mean? She demanded. Look, Jules, after what we've been studying in our social justice class, how can you get so upset about stupid uniforms? Ha! Do you know why we've been studying all those child labor issues right now? She asked. Because it isn't phys ed and those are social justice topics, I suggested. Mr. Roberts is trying to distract you with those issues so you don't think about the school uniform. That's why. Are you serious? Do you really think that's what he's been doing? It's his style, just like the way he didn't consult anybody and ambushed us with it. It is his style to not consult. It isn't his style to be sneaky. Yeah, defend him like a good little soldier. I felt like telling her that the wedding was definitely not going to happen, but that would have been too confusing and embarrassing. I'm going to go get fitted now, I said. You should probably come in too. After all, you can't burn it in protest unless you have it. Funny, very funny, but I think I have better places to go and better people to be with. She turned and walked away. She's a lot madder at you than she is at me, Oswald said. And do you know why? Why? I asked, although I was pretty sure I didn't want to hear the answer. High expectations, he said. And that means she doesn't expect me to care or come up with an answer, so she's only mildly annoyed with me. But you, she thinks you might be able to come up with a solution. You've set the bar too high. That's why she's mad at you. That did make sense. Well, that and the fact that she's still interested in dating you someday, Oswald added. And why do you think that? He tapped the side of his head. Great intelligence combined with a keen sense of the human condition. Yeah, right. Don't believe me. You wouldn't be the first person to doubt greatness. Do you know how many people thought Galileo was crazy? But he showed them when he discovered gravity. Galileo didn't discover gravity. That was Newton. Galileo discovered that the planets circle the sun. And what do you think holds them up there? Fishing wire? Thanks for the lesson on the universe. I better go and get fitted. Oswald followed me into the gym. There was rack after rack of jackets. I looked through them for one for my size. The material was stiff and coarse to the touch. Oswald said his jacket softened with wear. I looked at the size. It was large, my size. The tag listed the material blends and washing instructions. The whole jacket could just go in the washing machine. On the inside pocket was a symbol. Strange. That symbol looked very familiar to me. I wondered if I'd seen it on Oswald's jacket, or maybe I owned something made by them, or... No, that wasn't it. I remembered. But that couldn't be right. Could it? Chapter 10. Did you see this label? I asked Oswald as I held the jacket directly in front of his face. It'd be a little hard to miss, he said as he pushed it aside. But do you know what it means? I asked. Like I said before, it's a polyester blend, machine washable, and... No, the symbol. That is the name of the company. Why would they use a symbol instead of a name? Oswald asked. Partially so they don't have to use translations or different types of writing in other countries. But I think mainly so people won't know who they are. It's to confuse people. Well, it's working. I'm confused. But why wouldn't they want people to know the name of the company? Do they make bad stuff? Because then people will know that they were made by a company that... Wait. We need to check the others to see if they're all made by the same company. Maybe it's just some of them. I tossed the jacket onto a pile of other clothes. I started sorting through the jackets. I grabbed one from the hanger and threw it open to reveal the label. There was the symbol. I tossed it onto the table. I grabbed the next. There it was again. and threw it aside. The next and the next all had that innocent-looking symbol. Maybe it was just the jackets. The sweaters all have it too, Oswald said. I went over to the next table and started looking at the items there. There were skirts. I opened up a skirt. That was a new experience, and I searched for the label. There it was again. I threw it aside to check a second and then a third, and each one had the same label. Excuse me, Owen called out. I don't think those skirts are for you. I threw the skirt onto the pile. And there is no need for you to make such a mess here, she scolded. Sorry, I'm really sorry. I turned away and went over to the table that was piled high with pants. Each and every one of them was labeled the same. I grabbed Oswald by the jacket. Come with me. I have to find Mr. Roberts and tell him about this. I think he knows about the uniforms being here and the fitting taking place. He's quick that way, Oswald said. Not that. I have to tell him about the manufacturer. I have to show him the label and... Wait, no. I have to show him information about the label. We have to go to the resource center. I'm not allowed there, Oswald said. What? A minor understanding about missing books and fines that haven't been paid, and even more unbelievable, something about how I made too much noise. Let's go to the computer lab instead. Whatever. As long as there's a computer and internet access, I'm good. We left the gym and hurried down the hall. What exactly do you need internet for? Oswald asked. You'll see soon enough. There was no class in the computer lab. More than half of the machines were available. I sat down and quickly logged in. The machine whirred and purred, but didn't seem to want to move very quickly. Finally, a search engine came on, and I typed in the address. It popped up, the heading on the page, simple but clear. The 10 worst offenders. And right below that, in third place, was that awful symbol. I printed the page as Oswald read over my shoulder. I didn't have to read it because I knew exactly what it said. You know, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true, Oswald said. Look at the source. He scrolled down the page. Okay, so this is a good source, but maybe it's an old report and they've changed. Look at the date at the top, I said. He went back up to the top. It had been published earlier this year. That still doesn't mean they haven't changed, he suggested. Maybe they have. Probably they haven't. I logged out of the computer and went over to the printer and grabbed the sheet. We need to find Julia and tell her about this, Oswald said. Are you insane? I asked. The jury's still out on that one, he joked. But she is student president, and she does hate these uniforms, and this would send her over the edge, I said. Wouldn't that be fun to watch? Oswald asked. I grabbed him by his jacket. You have to promise me you won't talk to Julia about this, that you won't talk to anybody about this. Well, except for Mr. Roberts. What? I can only talk to one person I don't want to talk to? We have to, I said. He has to know about this. Then you tell him. You don't need me there. I need to show him the label on your jacket. Oswald pulled off his jacket and tried to hand it to me. What are you doing? I asked. Just come with me. Nope, I'm not going near him. It sounds like you're afraid to go. I am afraid, and so should you be, Oswald said. Afraid of what? I demanded. Haven't you ever heard the saying, they kill the messenger? He's not going to kill us. It's not us, it's me I'm worried about. You, he likes. He likes you too. He likes me, but he really likes you, Oswald said. Look, he's not going to kill us, I said. He's never killed anybody before. Are you sure? He was in the Marines. Regardless, he's never killed a student. You know him. He's tough, but he is fair. He'll want to hear this. Oswald took a deep breath. I'll go with you, but I still think this is a mistake.